The first thing that went quiet wasn't her voice. It was the fork against porcelain, the pause before she swallowed, the way the lamp in our living room hummed louder than the conversation ever did anymore. We used to fill evenings with stray stories and dumb jokes, little reports from work that only mattered because we told them to each other. But lately our dinners felt like waiting rooms, and I couldn't tell whether we were early for something or late for everything. The city pressed its face to the windows in a gray smear, rain stitching the glass, traffic sighing like an old radiator. She picked at her salad like she was picking at a lock. I set my knife down and listened to the silence like it was trying to confess. I told myself it was routine. Everyone settles. Everybody gets tired. Love starts to wear the shape of ordinary, and we stop admiring the fit. But then I caught the new passwords. The phone turned face down. The shower left running a little longer while she lingered in the fog. Her laughter changed pitch when she texted, quicker, sharper, like a note held in the mouth and forced to stay small. She started saying the word space without looking at me. Space to think. Space to breathe. Space between our bodies even when our knees touched under the blanket. Space is just a nice way to say distance, and distance is a polite word for empty. The night it cracked, she was careless. Or maybe she wanted to be caught and was too tired to admit it. Her phone buzzed across the counter while I rinsed coffee grounds from the French press. The message lit the screen and her face was in the shower steam, a blurred thumbprint behind the door. I didn't mean to look. That's what I told myself later, but the truth is my eyes went there like they remembered where pain sleeps. Last night wrecked me, the bubble read. Couldn't stop thinking about your big stick the whole drive home. There it was, in ugly little letters pretending to be a joke, like a cartoon knife still cartoon shiny after it cuts something real. I didn't move, I let the water run. I let the world narrow to the faucet's steady rush and the phone's pale glow. There was another message below it, a picture cropped to a torso. Him, presumably, like a headless monument to appetite. A name at the top, Kellen. She'd never said that name in our house. The shower went quiet. I set her phone down as if it could bruise. I stared at the coffee grounds circling the sink and thought about the mornings we used to spend arguing about nothing, about which street had the better pastries, about whether plants prefer jazz. Grief doesn't arrive as a scream. It comes in as a weight in the room and makes everything else sound like it's whispering. She came out wrapped in towels, and a softness she saved for when she wanted something from the day, a pardon maybe, or an exception from gravity. I watched her cross the tile, small wet footprints like ellipses. "You okay?" she asked, casual, like she'd asked me that 1,000 times before. I nodded, because men like me nod when the world is on fire, like that could convince the flames to be polite. I said something about being late, about the rain. I kissed her cheek, and it tasted like clean water in someone else's mouth. She flinched like I'd pressed a bruise I hadn't touched. The day moved forward like it always does when it has no choice. Work was a fluorescent aquarium. People swam past my desk in bright ties and damp umbrellas and called each other rock stars for making pivot tables. My hands did tasks they'd learned a long time ago without needing a brain. My chest learned a new habit, counting breaths like receipts. At lunch, I opened the Notes app and typed her name and then deleted it and then typed it again, like that would teach me how to spell loss. I walked in the rain without my umbrella, because sometimes you want the sky to finish your sentences. That night, I asked nothing. She said goodnight with a hand on my shoulder and her fingers barely touching skin, the kind of touch that checks if you're still there, not the kind that wants you. When she fell asleep, I lay on my back and stared at the ceiling's faint cracks like they were a map to where this started. A car drifted by outside, and the headlights drew a soft rectangle of light across our closet door, then left it darker than before. I thought about the first time we danced in our kitchen, barefoot, a cheap speaker buzzing with an old soul track, our pasta water boiling over and both of us laughing like we were stealing time. When did we stop stealing and start losing? Around 2, the floorboards made that sound they make when the heat shifts inside the walls. I got up and went to the living room and sat in the dark, the city's glow turning the edges of furniture into suggestion. Her phone was where she left it, on the credenza earlier. I didn't touch it. I just looked at it like a lit window in a building across the street, other people inside moving around a life that had my face pressed to the glass. I thought I heard a message arrive, a phantom buzz like a ghost tapping politely. That was when I understood. Jealousy is not rage. It's a sickness that throws a sheet over the furniture in your heart and tells you this is only temporary. In the morning, I made coffee for 2 and poured one into her favorite mug, the chipped one with the yellow rim we picked up at a roadside stand 3 summers back. She came into the kitchen in a robe, hair tied up, eyes careful. I slid the cup toward her and said, as lightly as I could, "Who's Kellen?" The room did not explode. She set the cup down and it made the smallest sound. Her mouth opened and closed a few times like she was tasting words and not finding the right salt. A friend, she tried, and then immediately after, as if to beat the lie to the punch, no, I can't do this, I can't pretend. She told me pieces, not a timeline, just shards, happy hour turned late, laughter that found an exit. An excuse that came built in, we've been distant, haven't we? It happened again, and again. Each again hit the tile like a spoon dropped from a height. She did not cry, I wish she had, tears are loud but honest. She looked at me the way people look at mirrors they don't like anymore. I don't know what I want, she said, which was worse than hatred. Hatred is a clean decision. Not knowing is a house with doors that open onto other doors. I asked the question I thought I would never ask. Did you say anything about me? She blinked. What? My throat hurt. To him, I said. About me, about my body. Her silence was an animal in the room, breathing. When she finally spoke, she took too long, and the truth moved in before her words did. We were drunk, she said, which is not an answer. I said stupid things. I felt the shape of the text again, that phrase like a punchline with blood on it. Big stick like men are lumber, like love is a sport with a scoreboard you can read in the dark. I need time, she whispered at last. Space. There was that word again, that polite dagger. I nodded and looked at the window and watched the rain lift and then resume, like it had to collect itself between feelings. Take what you need, I said, and my voice didn't break, which felt like a betrayal of my own body. She started to say my name, but it sounded wrong in her mouth now, like a key for a different lock. The coffee went cold, the lamp hummed, the day opened its fist, and that was how it happened, not a slam, but a settling. Everything sat down where it didn't belong. That night, after she packed a small bag and said she'd stay with a friend for a few days, I found myself in our bedroom folding the corner of the sheet the way she liked, out of reflex, as if my hands hadn't been told about the end of us. I lay on her side of the bed and listened to the hallway, the elevator, the next-door neighbor's laugh. The apartment felt like a stage after the play, props still warm from use, the audience gone. On her nightstand was a hair tie and the ring dish we bought at a craft fair, empty as a dry pond. I picked up the hair tie and let it fall. It landed without sound, as if the air helped it. The phone buzzed once more on the credenza in the other room. I didn't need to check. Answers are just different routes to the same place. I stared at the ceiling and thought about wood, grain patterns, knots, the way pressure makes it stronger. Then I thought about the word bragged, a word for something you do when the truth isn't enough and you need it to be shiny. Somewhere in the city, someone with my wife's laugh was telling a story that had my body in the background as a comparison joke. The room held its breath with me. Morning felt a year away. Cliffhanger. The door clicked in the hallway, footsteps paused at our threshold, then moved on, leaving the handle untouched, and the apartment filled with a silence so complete it felt like the moment before a confession. The first week without her organized itself into rituals that proved nothing and kept me alive. Wake before the sun bruised the sky. Boil water. Grind beans. Pour slowly, counting to 30 between spirals, because precision is the only prayer skeptics keep. Drink standing up by the window, and let the city's damp breath fog the glass. Let the shower run too hot, step into the sting, whisper something like a name and let it be lost in the steam. Go to work, make the right faces, nod at jokes like you remember how. Grief becomes a job, and the hardest part is there's no paycheck, just a heavy coat you can't take off anywhere people can see you. Little artifacts betrayed me, a bobby pin under the couch. A receipt for a bakery I hate tucked into her tote, dated 3 weeks ago at 9:14 p.m., when she told me she was catching up on emails at the office. The apartment preserved her like a museum after the exhibit has moved on. The indentation on the couch cushion where she curled to read, the smudge on the hallway wall where her shoulder always brushed when she carried laundry, the lavender hand cream by the sink. The more I noticed, the more I understood that love is 1,000 small repetitions, and when it ends, those repetitions don't know how to stop. Sleep turned into a negotiation. I'd lie on my back and bargain with the dark. 1 hour then another, like buying time at a pawn shop. When I did sleep, it was dreams of half-finished rooms. I was always patching paint that wouldn't match. In the mornings, I forgot for exactly 7 seconds. Then it returned, a familiar visitor who doesn't knock anymore. The body remembers pain efficiently. It presses play without you asking. On the 5th night, I opened her messages. I know how that reads. But curiosity is just heartbreak looking for scaffolding. The thread with Kellen was not dirty in the way people warn each other about. It was worse. It was intimate in the daily, stupid way that builds lives. Memes, a photo of his dog. Complaints about traffic. Then the night's bars lit like aquariums, the same glint on glasses, her smile tilted toward him in a booth that looked too familiar. And the lines, the line that had split my ribs open. Couldn't stop thinking about your big stick the whole drive home. Another, he used to be sensitive about that stuff, followed by a laughing emoji that felt like a surgeon tossed it. I learned his job, tech sales. A gym in his building he photographed like a lover, a habit of calling himself Alpha in a way that sounded like a man trying to sell himself to himself. He wasn't a villain. That made it feel cheaper in a way. It's easier to hate monsters than mirrors. He had a sister and a busted knee and a playlist for leg day. He sent her voice notes that started with a laugh and ended with a softer voice than mine had been lately. He used my wife's name like he owned the copyright. There's a point, after the shock, where grief throws out its back and you realize you can't carry it the same way anymore. Mine came when I put on a shirt for work and caught her fragrance faintly on the collar. I sat down on the edge of the tub and laughed, not because any of it was funny, but because some sounds have to be louder than breathing. Then the laugh turned into something ugly, and I let it, and when it was over I felt like someone had wrung me out and hung me near a window. That afternoon, I deleted the photos of us on my phone from the last year, then stared at the empty spaces on the grid like missing teeth. People started to notice in that concerned, performative way that keeps office culture civil. My manager asked if I needed support. A coworker slid a chocolate bar onto my desk like contraband. An acquaintance at lunch said, "You know, these things happen for a reason," which is a sentence we invented so we don't have to admit how random the cruelty is. I nodded and said thanks and went back to my spreadsheet, moving cells around like pretend furniture. And then came the message from him, not to me at first, to her in the thread I couldn't stop reading even as it kept taking something from me each time. He wrote, "He knows," and then, a minute later, "If he wants to talk man to man, I'm around." It made something inside me go very still, man to man, as if the damage were a brand he could negotiate, as if there were a code we could refer to, a handbook for how to share a life you didn't build. I copied his number and stared at it for a long time, the digits looking like coordinates to a place I swore I'd never go. I wrote and rewrote the text a dozen times, settled on. "We should talk," he replied immediately like he had been running laps around his phone. "Tonight?" he asked. "My building has a lounge, quiet." He sent an address. I looked it up, newer construction, glass. A coffee bar in the lobby where the cups are biodegradable and the plants are expensive. It felt theatrical and obvious, which somehow fit. If a life is going to split, at least let the scenery commit. I wore a shirt that fit just right and didn't smell like our apartment. The rain had paused and the air had that wet metal taste that comes after it quits but hasn't cleaned up yet. His lobby was warm. The concierge didn't look up. I found him in a lounge with mid-century chairs and a fireplace screen that hummed with fake flames. Kellen was taller than me but not by much, handsome in the way of men who decided they would be, new sneakers. Watch that wanted to be seen. He stood when I entered, which was something. "You must be," he began. I gave him my name. He shook my hand with an earnestness I wanted to bite. We sat. Silence first because that's more honest than language when the air is loaded. He gestured at the coffee bar and asked if I wanted something. I said no. He smiled with one side of his mouth, a gesture I'd seen in pictures he'd sent her. "I didn't expect you to reach out," he said. "I don't know what to say that makes this better." "It doesn't get better," I said. "It gets different." He nodded like a man who'd read that in a book. "I need to ask you a favor," I said. His eyebrows lifted. "Leave her alone." He inhaled as if to perform a fence, then set it down. "She reached out to me," he said. "I didn't go looking." I swallowed. "I don't care about the origin story," I said quietly. "I care about what happens next." He leaned back, arms folded in a way that made his chest look bigger. "Look," he said, "we didn't mean to hurt you." I let the sentence sit there until it embarrassed itself. "And the things you said about me?" I asked. To her, color rose in his neck. "We were messing around," he said. "Jokes." "I read the messages," I said. "I know about the bragging." The word felt childish in my mouth. He shifted, then grinned in a way that begged me to hate him less for it. "Man," he said, "that's just locker room stuff. She said you were sensitive. I didn't think you'd." He stopped. I let him see the look on my face. "Okay," he said, softening. "Okay, I get it." For the first time, his eyes looked like actual eyes. "I'm sorry, that's on me." "I'm not going to hit you," I said, because he looked like he was waiting for me to. "I'm not going to do the scene you think I came to do. I just want you to understand the thing you're taking isn't a prize. It's a life. It's dishes at 11 p.m. and her grandmother's apple cake recipe and the way she hums when she reads, like she's chewing the music. It's not about your alpha nonsense. You don't get to measure what I've held." His eyes dropped. He nodded. "I'll give her space," he said. "I'll back off, I mean it." "Good," I said and stood. He stood too. "There's one more thing," I added. He looked wary. "You sent photos. Stop that. And delete what you've got, not for me, for her. She'll need to decide who she is without echoes." He nodded again, slower, like he was taking notes in a class he hadn't registered for. "Done," he said. He extended his hand. I didn't take it. "Take care," I said and left. On the walk home, the rain returned in a new mood, less angry, more tired. I cut through side streets lined with trees that drip after dark, everything making small sounds. Under a street lamp, I saw my reflection in a puddle, a man who had chosen not to break a jaw and had, instead, tried to build a boundary out of sentences. It didn't feel noble. It felt like pushing a couch against a door after the burglar already left with the silver. When I reached the apartment, the hallway smelled like someone else's cooking. Inside, it smelled like us and not us. I turned on one lamp. The room arranged itself around the light obediently. I sat on the edge of the couch and exhaled, long and slow, until I felt the bones in my back count themselves. I didn't text her. I didn't tell her I'd met him. I didn't need her to know the form my dignity took. It was enough that I knew. It was enough that the air moved through my lungs without catching. Cliffhanger. The doorknob turned once, gently, as if whoever stood outside was trying to remember how to come home, and then it turned back, leaving a ghost of metal cold on the air. She came back on a Tuesday afternoon like rain that had read the forecast and decided to be early. I was at the kitchen sink, rinsing a glass I hadn't used, when the lock clicked and her shape filled the doorway with the same outline my memory had saved, only softer at the edges. She carried the small bag she had taken and a different face. Not older, not exactly, just arranged by truth. We looked at each other like people standing on opposite banks of a river that used to be a street. "I didn't know if you'd be home," she said. "I live here," I answered, and the line sounded petty when it left my mouth, so I softened. I was about to make coffee. She nodded and stepped in, leaving the door open behind her as if a quick escape might be necessary. She set the bag down by the chair she always saved for guests. She did not take off her shoes. The rules had changed in places the rules never lived before. We didn't touch. We didn't sit. The apartment felt like a glass box. Every move careful, every sound exaggerated. "I'm sorry," she said, and the words dropped between us and did not break. "I know," I said. "I mean it," she added, and I nodded because apologies need witnesses even when they don't build anything. "I told him not to contact me," she said. "I blocked him." There was a version of me that would have asked if she had done that before or after he got bored. That version kept his mouth shut and listened to the refrigerator hum like a faraway river. "I met him," I said. It came out like a glass sliding on wood, careful, deliberate, with friction. Her eyes widened and then flattened. "Why?" "Because I'm a man who makes coffee without sugar and decisions that don't require applause," I said quietly. "Because I needed to look at the mess without smashing my hands in it." She closed her eyes. "Did you?" "No," I said. "I didn't touch him. I asked him to step back. He said he would." She lowered herself onto the edge of the couch like it might tip. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "I know," I said, "but it's what I could do without losing myself." We sat in a silence that had gradients. The lamp wore afternoon like a coat. The rain outside found a steady rhythm and wrote its name on the windows again and again until the glass forgot how to be clear. She rubbed her thumb against the seam of a cushion. "I said awful things," she said finally. "Things that make me someone I don't want to be." "Yes," I said. She blinked at the absence of rescue in that word. "I wanted you to say it wasn't me," she admitted. "That I was not myself." I shook my head. "You were a version of yourself. We all have those. We just don't always take them out where the light can see them." Her mouth trembled, and for a second I saw the woman who cried during dog food commercials and wiped her eyes with the back of her hand like she was annoyed at them for existing. "I loved you," she said, past tense intentional or not. "I love you," I said, present tense like a vow and a diagnosis. Her gaze slid to the dining table where the two chairs still faced each other like patient animals. "I don't know how to fix this," she said. "Do you want me to come back?" I took a breath that felt like stepping into cold water. "I want not to be humiliated in my own house," I said softly. "I want the version of us that knew the names of our neighbors' houseplants. I want the person who held my hand in traffic because the song on the radio made the city look beautiful. I don't want to be an option you test against other people's bodies." She winced as if I'd spoken a physical blow. I thought if I could just feel wanted." "You were wanted," I interrupted gently. "Just not in the way a story like this says wanted is supposed to look. It wasn't fireworks. It was the light in the morning, and the laundry folded the way you like, and the grocery list with your favorite cereal added without asking. I know those aren't Instagram things, but they're teeth in the gear. They make the machine move." She stared at the floor. "I hate that I bragged," she whispered. "It wasn't just cheating. It was turning our life into a joke to make a stranger think I was fun." The word bragged slid through the room again, all swagger and shame. I didn't rescue her from that either. Some pits need time at the bottom. "Do you want my forgiveness?" I asked after a while. She looked up. "Yes. Do you want my permission to skip the consequences?" I added. She flinched, then shook her head. "No." We talked then not like lawyers, but like people who knew where the light switches were in each other. We brought out the small hurts, the accumulations, my long hours that I wore like virtue, her silent resentments that calcified into corners. We didn't excuse the things that followed. We just set them down next to each other and let them be ugly under the same lamp. Somewhere in there, the rain slowed and then stopped, like it was tired of translating. The room smelled like old coffee and wet fabric and the citrus cleaner we both hated but kept buying. "I'm going to stay with my sister for a while," she said at last. The decision had the weight of furniture being moved, inevitable and heavy. "I won't ask you to wait." I nodded. "I'm not a station," I said. "I'm a person. People don't hold trains." It came out harsher than I meant. She didn't argue. She stood. "May I take the ring?" she asked, and then hastily, eyes widening, "I don't mean keep it. I mean hold it, until I know what to do with it." The ring dish on the nightstand felt present, listening. "Take what you need to decide," I said. "Leave what you need to remember." She approached and stopped an arm's length away. We hovered there, two magnets in the moment before they agree on a direction. "Can I?" she began. "No," I said too quickly, then softer. "Not yet." She nodded and stepped back as if the air itself had rules now. She picked up her bag. She looked at the windows, at the way afternoon light was learning our furniture again. "I'm sorry," she said one more time, and this time the words shook. She left with the carefulness of someone carrying a sleeping animal. The door clicked shut, and the apartment exhaled a long, aching breath. I walked to the chair where she had pressed her thumb into the seam and placed my thumb there too, like a strange, private handshake. The quiet did its work. It patted around, checking the corners, scaring nothing away. I stood a long time by the window and watched the street perform its small dramas. A cyclist dodging a taxi, a couple arguing about umbrellas with good-natured exasperation, a kid in a yellow raincoat stomping in the exact center of a puddle, because that is what puddles are for. On the dining table, a droplet of rain had somehow made its way in on her bag and now sat there, perfect and whole, refusing to absorb. I watched until it finally gave in and vanished into the wood without a mark. The house felt different then, not better, not worse, just aware of itself. The floor creaked as if something had shifted, or maybe it was my body, or maybe it was time catching up. Cliffhanger. My phone lit up with her name and a single message. "He's outside," and the hallway filled with a new, unwelcome footfall that stopped at our door and did not knock. When morning came, it didn't announce itself with light so much as with temperature. The apartment cooled in that specific way mornings do, a gentle release of heat from the night's grip. The city outside cleared its throat. The first bus sighed at the corner. A neighbor's kettle began its distant, familiar scream. I had fallen asleep on the couch in yesterday's clothes, with the phone face down on my chest, and her last message dried like salt in my eyes. In the gray, things looked honest. It's easier to tell the truth when colors aren't shouting. There had been no knock in the night. If he had come, and if the word outside meant what it usually means, he had chosen not to perform. Maybe the rain convinced him to go home. Maybe her block had worked in time. Maybe the universe took pity and put a gentle finger on his chest and said, "Not today. It doesn't matter." The halls stayed quiet. The door never moved. Some dangers evaporate on contact with sleep. Some regrets do not. I sat up slowly, bones counting themselves again, and made coffee with hands that had taught themselves a rhythm unconnected to loss. The kettle's pour felt like prayer this time, not a plea, but a gratitude for the ritual. Steam fogged the small window over the sink, and I drew a line through it with my knuckle, a childish act that made me feel human, which is sometimes the same as feeling okay. Outside, a pale slice of morning opened between buildings like somebody had tugged a curtain an inch. The light wasn't warm, but it was honest. On the table lay a note I had written to myself in the night and forgotten. "Don't become the worst thing that happened to you." The letters leaned a little, like they wanted to fall into each other. I folded the note into the ring dish because it felt right that something soft should hold something sharp. I walked through the rooms we had made together. Bedroom first, the tidy violence of an empty side of the bed, the pillow with a permanent memory of her head. Bathroom, 2 brushes in a cup, 1 face cream cap off, a small victory I didn't correct. Hallway, the smudge at shoulder height, proof of 1,000 careless, loving passes. Living room, a plant we'd failed to name doing its quiet work, green without asking for applause. I thought about revenge. The word people fed me in messages when they heard, the sharp solution offered by movies and men at bars. I had done a version of it, walked into the other man's curated life, spoke without shaking, refused to play the scenes that leave blood on the floor. But the longer I stood there in the morning's gray, the more it seemed that revenge wasn't punitive after all. It was restorative. It was me refusing to let their vocabulary edit who I am. It was a refusal to carry their brag into my bones. Forgiveness, I understood then, wasn't a gift to her. It was a key for me. It didn't open back into our old apartment. It opened into a room where my name sounded like itself again. I could forgive the person she was in those screenshots without letting her back into the bed we had built a language in. I could forgive the brag without accepting the measurement. I could forgive the name Alpha for being a costume someone needed to survive his mirror. I could let it all go without pretending it never hurt, so I did small things. I changed the sheets slow and exact, the way she liked, because I liked it too. I washed the 2 mugs and set one back on the shelf a little further from the front, not banishing it, just giving it room. I opened the windows and let the air in, even though it was cold, even though the traffic made the curtains tremble like they were nervous to be seen. I played the song we once danced to and didn't dance, just listened to the space it made in the room. The song sounded older and braver than we were then. When the phone buzzed, it was a different tone. A message from my sister. Mom's recipe for the cake, you wanted it. I laughed and it didn't hurt. Yes, I wrote back, send it. Please. The recipe arrived with a photo of her handwriting, the loops familiar, the measurements forgiving. I printed it and put it on the fridge with the magnet we got from the art museum on a rainy day when we pretended to know things about shapes. The magnet didn't care who we'd been, it just held. Around 9, she called. I let it ring once, then answered. Her voice came through in that careful way people have when they're walking on new floors. Thank you, she said, for what you did. For not, she didn't finish. Some sentences come with cliffs built in. I'm going to stay away for a while, she added. I think that's the only way I don't become the worst thing I've done. I looked at the plant by the window, its leaves catching the new light like little plates. Take care, I said. It was not warm, it was not cold, it was true. Do you hate me? She asked. I thought of the word hate and how it chews up the owner first. No, I said. I loved you. I probably will in a way that has nothing to do with doors and beds, but I don't want what we were last. I want what we were first, and that's gone. She cried then, softly, in a way that made me want to press my hand against the glass on a winter day to feel the shape of the cold. I let the quiet hold us. When she found her voice again, she said, I'll bring the ring by when it's not a message. Okay, I said. We hung up like adults. By noon, sunlight paler than summer, but brave, found its way into the kitchen and turned the metal of the sink into a kind of low lamp. I cracked the window, and the city sent up the smell of wet pavement and bus exhaust and fresh bread from the corner. I pulled a chair to the window and sat with my legs tucked under me like a child and let the morning be itself. The apartment no longer felt like a crime scene. It felt like a room where someone had told a hard truth and the walls had absorbed it without cracking. On the counter, the ring dish held my note and a paperclip that looked oddly elegant in that company. I slid the dish to the center like a tiny ceremony and whispered, to no one that needed to hear it, I forgive you. The words didn't change the air. They didn't fix the past. They just made a map out of the next hour. I put on my shoes and stepped into the hallway and locked the door behind me, and the click of the lock sounded like a period at the end of a long, long sentence. Outside, the street had that clean, post-rain shine that makes even broken things look intentional. A bus hissed, a cyclist swore softly at a cab that drifted, a woman laughed into her phone and then covered her mouth as if laughter were rude at this hour. I walked past the bakery I hate and bought a small loaf because it smelled like starting over. On the way back, I looked up at our window and saw nothing, just glass, just sky, just light. It felt right that I couldn't see me from out here. It meant I was inside living, not outside looking in. When I returned, the apartment greeted me the way empty rooms do, with an invitation. I sliced the bread, buttered a piece, burned my tongue, laughed at myself, and put the kettle back on because rituals can share a day. I thought about what I would do next. Not the big decisions with lawyers and paper, not yet. Just the little ones. Which corner to move the chair to for winter sun, which book to finish, which friend to call who wouldn't try to fix me. I thought about learning the plant's name. I thought about buying a second pillow that matched the first, not as a replacement, but as an apology to my own neck. The afternoon unspooled quietly. As the light stretched thin, I opened the window one last time and let the cold in. It tasted like clean metal again. I stood there with my hands on the sill and watched the city repeat itself with the dedication of a heart. Somewhere she was breathing too. Somewhere he was learning to keep his voice down. Somewhere the version of me that would have chosen noise over dignity was pacing an imaginary room and shouting at imaginary people. I let him tire himself out. I made space for the quiet one. When evening arrived, it did not arrive with fanfare. It gathered in corners and rested on the tops of picture frames and turned the plants into silhouettes with opinions. I switched on a lamp and the room agreed to be warm again. I sat, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I needed to hold anything up. The room could hold itself, so could I quiet ending. The morning after, the first true sun in days spilled across the table, and the chair opposite mine sat empty and peaceful, and nothing in me rushed to fill it. and nothing in me rushed to fill it.